Well, hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode. You know, it's been over a year now since COVID-19 just crashed into our world and totally transformed our way of life with this global pandemic. And it really disrupted so much of how we worshiped and prayed and gathered together as the church. And a lot of what that meant is that worship and prayer has gone online, and people have begun to connect together online through video conferencing, Zoom, and prayer rooms that are virtual. And we're beginning to see this amazing interconnectedness of prayer groups happening online in ways we never have before. So even though we're not excited about what's happened with the pandemic, we love the way God has stirred up creative solutions using technology to pray. And so there's an amazing 24/7 global prayer room that has been created called the Global Family. And I have Jonathan Friz back on the podcast today, and we're going to talk about this global online 24/7 365 prayer room that has emerged. And I'm very excited to hear about what God's doing through this online virtual prayer room. Before we dive in with Jonathan today, just want to welcome anybody that's new to the podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. The Presence Pioneers podcast exists to equip you to host and experience the presence of God through day and night worship and prayer, because we believe God's presence changes everything. And so we release episodes on Thursdays. They're either going to be short little Bible teachings, or they're going to be extended interviews and conversations like what we're having today. So be sure to hit subscribe wherever you're tuning in so that you can track with us and get the latest episodes. You can also visit our website at presencepioneers.org at any time. We have our entire episode archive up there. We have more information about our ministry, and you can also make a donation up there to just say thanks and support the podcast as well if you would like to do that. So, Jonathan Friz, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Matt. Great to be here.
Yeah, well, you were on episode 16. I went back and looked it up, and we are, by the time this episode comes out, we'll probably be past episode 70 on the podcast. It's great to have you back.
That's amazing, man.
You're one of the OGs of the Presence Pioneer podcast. It's been a couple years.
You're prolific in podcasting. That's pretty amazing. It's only been like a year and a half. I'm impressed that you've done that many episodes. That's consistent. Yeah, we're doing them every week now, but it's great to have you. We'll make sure to link back to the previous conversation we had, episode 16, in the show notes and in the description, so people can go back and hear about the origin of your ministry, 10 Days, and how you have this vision of seeing cities shut down to pray for 10 days at a time. It's amazing. A lot's happened since we last talked. We saw some cities shut down, didn't we?
We saw some cities shut down, yes. So I really want to talk about this virtual prayer room that's happened, which is really awesome. But before we do that, let's just catch up a little bit. Since you were last on the podcast, what happened with 10 days? What happened last year? I know you were wanting to see cities pray for 10 days, shut down, and go after God, and we kind of got hit by this pandemic. So maybe just give us a quick update on what's going on in your world.
Yeah, last year was a pretty amazing year. God had given me this vision of seeing 120 cities joining together during the 10 days. So the 10 days is based on the fall Jewish feasts, from the Day of Trumpets to the Day of Atonement, makes a 10-day period. And this vision God had given me years ago was that we were going to see whole cities stopping during that time to unite, come together in unity, and seek the face of God together, almost like a heaven meets earth reality at a citywide level, leading to, among other things, just an answer to Jesus' prayer in John 17, that there'd be genuine oneness among believers. And so that's our overall vision. But last year specifically, felt like God was saying to have 120 locations. And, that was a big stretch for us. The year before, we'd had about 70. And I'm not really one for like, hey, let's go for like this number. Let's just make up a number. But God was I felt like the Lord was pretty insistent about it. And so when the pandemic hit, it was, I think, discouraging in a lot of ways, put a limit on our ability to travel, mobilize, do all kinds of things. And yet, in a lot of ways, God really used it. We were just talking about this before we started recording. It's easier to schedule a video call together than for us to travel to each other. And so we saw a lot of, mobilization happen on Zoom and on conference calls and things like that. And then we saw through some different partnerships with groups like The Return, which was a National Solemn Assembly. Just a lot of new people get involved. In general, I think you probably bear witness to this as well, different prayer networks, people were working together more than we'd maybe seen in the past. And so, really through the Lord working through these partnerships, we saw well over 120 locations join in 10 days last year. Super encouraging. We were able to track about 155, but
wow.
We just weren't really sure. It got to kind of the point where we were like, we're not sure exactly how many are doing this, but
that's incredible.
So that was super encouraging, and just saw the Lord really move powerfully during those times. So many amazing testimonies that came out of those times. And that was
awesome.
On a global basis. So it was in the U.S. and then also globally.
That's amazing. So you had over 150 locations that were in some way, focusing for 10 days in their city, prayer, fasting, unity, coming together to worship, pray, seek the Lord. Some of them I know were 24/7 during those 10 days. Some of them were gathering nightly, that kind of thing. That's incredible. Well, I mean, who would have thought that it would have increased even beyond your expectations in a year like 2020 in the midst of COVID?
Yeah, COVID was good for the prayer business, I think.
People got desperate.
Yeah, I obviously we're not happy about what happened, but I do think it created a sense of need,
right?
And it also got us to slow down in our normal lives and reprioritize. Okay, what's really important?
Yeah.
And so in both of those realms, I think it helped reduce people's barriers to, I can't get involved in something like this.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously we weren't excited that cities shut down for the reasons they shut down, but it was kind of cool to see what could happen if a city shut down. And it also just goes to show you that cities can shut down. That's possible.
Right. So, just to put it in context, I've been traveling around for 16 years with this crazy vision of cities shutting down. But, in my vision, it was because of coming together for prayer, et cetera.
Right.
But just that phrase, like cities, I've said that thousands and thousands of times. And so there was it was kind of like, okay, this isn't what I saw in the vision, but it's similar enough. It caught people's attention.
Yeah.
And in a way was encouraging. I don't want cities to be shut down normally, unless it's for prayer.
Yeah.
But there was a measure of like, this is possible. This is, it's hard to explain what I'm trying to say here. But
no, that makes sense. Yeah. I just think it was, certainly God can use those little moments to just give you a little wink and just say, hey, you're on the right path. Like, keep pressing on. And so
definitely.
So let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about, this virtual prayer expression that's emerging. We did another episode 32, where we talked about a global virtual burn that we did last spring, where we did 168 hours of nonstop worship across the world, connected with the Burn 24/7 movement, where we had worshipers and intercessors from around the world that were live streaming. This new prayer ministry called Global Family has emerged that you've helped launch. Tell us about how this got started.
Yeah, it really started. I have a good friend who's a longtime missionary, kind of a missionary, mother in the faith, Liz Edlita. And Liz has worked with me on 10 days for a number of years. And so in 2019, she came up with this idea: what if we did a 10 days that was 24/7 on Zoom? And, I'm a little bit of a Luddite. I'm not, when people get the new technology, I'm usually like the one who gets the hand-me-down version.
Yeah.
So I'm immediately thinking like, I don't know, like I'd rather just pray in person with people, and
Right.
conference call prayer isn't as good. But it seemed like it could be the Lord, and so we had some conversations about it. Jason Hubbard from the International Prayer Council and America Prays was a part of those. And it turned out that Jason had already had a vision for these like online 24/7 prayer rooms. And he shared that, and something just happened in my heart where I was just like, yeah, we're totally going to do that. This is in 2019, so this is before COVID.
Okay.
And it just really excited me that doing these 10-day things could be part of kind of sowing into Jason's vision, which was larger and ongoing. Anyway, so we prototyped it in 2019. We probably had average of 3 to 10 people on there. But we did 24/7 prayer for 10 days. It was amazing. Like when I heard the testimonies afterwards, I was like, wow, people really had a 10 days experience. They experienced God moving in their lives, just different. Everyone had a different story, but everyone had a story.
Yeah. Give us some of those. What were some of the things you saw?
Just ones I remember from the first time, and it was just people talking about the unity that they experienced in the spirit with other believers from other nations, and
Yeah.
Like, hey, this cool, just how it caught them by surprise. People sharing about new revelation, heart for different things that are on God's heart that had impacted them. Cool testimonies like, hey, we saw a new person saved every day of the 10 days. That was a testimony.
Wow.
Someone got saved every day. Just miraculous stories like, hey, God healed me of a sickness or an illness, or the intervention of God. All these. It was just cool, and just people weeping, like not wanting it to end. We want to, continue to do this.
While on
things like
Zoom.
that were all on Zoom, right?
Yes.
I mean,
That's incredible.
who doesn't want Zoom to end? I mean, that's like, yeah, that's weird, right? That's a work of God.
Yeah.
So, yeah, kind of a cool thing happened before the pandemic. God led us. We usually do, for 10 days, we usually do a summit in the spring. And in 2020, in January, he led us not to do a summit, but instead to do another 24/7, 10 days on Zoom, kind of based around Pentecost.
Yeah.
And so when March hit, when COVID hit, I was like, Lord, that was a great idea.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Just to clarify, plenty of my life got interrupted, but that was one thing that didn't. And so I just felt like, wow, this must be really significant if the Lord kind of told us ahead of time to do it this way. Yeah. And so we saw basically like a tenfold growth in the number of participants. So instead of like, 3 to 7 to 10, we were seeing, most hours 30 to 50,
wow,
often even more. During the spring, and obviously just people using the technology more, and becoming just more aware of it, more comfortable with it, and stuck at home. So people are joining on whatever they can, and saw the same thing happen. It was like, wow, God really moved through this platform. We did another 10 days on Zoom that fall, as we had done before. Once again, saw just greater increase in the number of people, and really started to see a team that was emerging. And so Jason Hubbard and I, because every time we'd finish one, people would be like, let's keep going. And we're like, guys, we don't know if 24/7 prayer is really hard.
Yes, it is.
And so let's wait. But really, sensing the Lord leading, and then because of the really the leadership team that was forming, we were like, wow, God has assembled a great group of people that are humble, highly competent, highly committed, people we love working with. And so we took the faith step of trying to launch this thing, and we did on January 1st. And so far we've gone, it looks like 3 whole months, 24/7, people from 45 nations, prayer happening in over 20 languages. That's on the call. And the way it works is just we have 168 hours in a week, and so there's 168 different prayer groups and prayer leaders that kind of rotate hour by hour around the globe, 24/7. And yeah, that's the Global Family amazing. 24/7 prayer room.
Yeah, and so are most of these people that are doing the hours individuals, or is it groups, or is it ministries or churches? How's that work?
Yeah, it's a variance on that. Like we've really encouraged people to have at least 2 or 3 other people that are in their group, to help, because
so that it's
if you think
corporate
about it, over
prayer,
a year,
collective prayer.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, it's never just one person in the room, or at least not that I'm aware of. And so we hope that each group is bringing people in. I think most groups are bringing in people that are that are committed to that hour.
Yep.
And so it's almost like you're mobilizing your own prayer group.
Yeah.
But you're just doing it with 167 other people.
Yeah.
So some are churches, some are like missions groups or missions organizations, and the focuses of the different hours are all different. We do have some overall themes, but people are, a lot of people come with their own theme that they like to pray into.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how does it seem to be going? What kind of feedback are you getting so far?
Yeah, I'm honestly amazed at how smoothly it's going. I think both Jason and I have done a number of prayer rooms of different kinds in the past, and we were just kind of prepared for, hey, there's probably going to be some bumps and things
24/7, 365 prayer from all over the world on Zoom. What could go wrong, right?
Yeah, in a lot of languages. It's going to be great. It's going to be no problems. So that I would say that's been my main takeaway, which is I think probably more of a testament to the team that we have than anything else. They've just done a great job. I'll see a thread. It's like, hey, the Zoom room shut down, and by the time I see it, somebody's already fixed it. Just so there's a great team dynamic. The prayer is good. I mean, I think there's some ups and downs in terms of having that many groups involved. You just may not, you may not know everyone as well. Not everyone's kind of been trained, so it's hard to form a common culture.
Right.
Some of the challenges, but overall, I think it's been really good. I mean, certainly times that I've been there, just God is moving. We have an hour on Wednesdays. It's afternoon time in the U.S. where we just meditate on the book of Revelation. And so, like sometimes we come on the hour before us, they're just like in anointed, travailing prayer. They kind of look up. They're like, oh, you guys are here. It's like, hey, we're here. Bless you guys. We take over. God moves. And then sometimes that spills out. It's like there's this exchange that's happening. But it is, sometimes you think, I don't want to pray on Zoom. It's not, it's like not as anointed maybe, or just maybe God isn't moving as much. But we've definitely experienced the Lord moving powerfully through these times. Yeah,
that's amazing. That's so cool. Yeah, so I would imagine each hour kind of probably takes on its own flavor depending on who the leader is. Like you said, it's kind of hard to get a common culture. I mean, we used to do that, experience some of that when we would do burns, because we would invite worship teams from different churches to come in and fill hours, and we kind of let them worship the way they like to worship. We would do 24 hours of worship, and 1 hour you'd have hymns, and then the next hour you'd have a youth band that's got their electric guitars real loud and noisy, and then you'd have, a gospel group with a little choir, and it was like, it was beautiful, but it was a little messy at the same time. So I'm guessing you guys are probably experiencing some of that same thing.
Yeah, I think it's like that. That's beautiful description, and we have similar dynamics too during 10 days of what you're describing.
Sure.
But we do a couple things. Like, I like to say there's two kinds of people in prayer. There's the people that are just like, tell me what to pray. Tell me what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then there's the people who are like, don't you dare tell me what I'm doing. So we provide like resources for people who just are like, hey, I just want to know what we're doing.
Yeah. I think you're
so we
describing
provide-
like prophets and teachers, basically the difference between those two.
I think that's probably right. I had never thought of that, but that's insightful. Yeah. Yeah. Some people are just like, I just want to know what we're doing. And then others are like, nope, we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
If you try and control me, this isn't going to work. And we honor and respect both of those kinds of people.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's been good. We do
great.
have a weekly time where we pray together. We call it church. So it happens Friday. In the U.S., it's Friday mornings. And I started out calling it church. I'm like, we need to have church in this thing. And I started doing it as a joke, and then the name kind of stuck.
That's
so
funny.
we have an hour of prayer together. Just so we have different groups from around the world leading prayer during that hour. And then we have a teaching hour. So we have an hour of teaching every week.
Oh, good.
And we're going to incorporate 10 days into the Global Family Prayer Room. And I think that'll actually be part of us. I mean, I think it's been great so far, but I think that'll help us in that goal of building more of a common culture.
Right.
Which is, it's a moving target, right? It's hard to do that.
Yeah.
Especially 24/7 prayer, it spreads you out.
Right.
By its very nature.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. I think having times like that where everyone kind of comes together and has a greater commitment in the prayer room is going to be exciting.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I'd love to get into how people can participate and that kind of thing. But before we do, I want to go back to something you said. You said 24/7 prayer is hard. And so I'm curious, because it's hard, my question is, why are you doing it then if it's so hard? And that's a question that, we've talked about day and night prayer a lot on this podcast, but, we might have somebody new, and still it's worth going there again and asking this question. Why are you doing it if it's hard?
My first thought is, why would you want to do something that wasn't hard? Actually, my first thought is just Jesus is worthy. That's the motivating factor. He is worthy of worship, praise, and adoration 24/7. It's the culture of heaven, and heaven is an atmosphere of 24/7 worship and prayer and praise. So, on earth as it is in heaven.
Yeah.
Why not? If we can have 7-Elevens or whatever open 24/7
Right.
for convenience, surely we can minister to the Lord 24/7.
Yeah.
So I think why we're doing this specifically is there's a specific story I tried to tell and just timeline of God's calling. So there's this isn't just like, hey, it sounds like a good idea, let's do this. But there's actually like a real sense, as I'm sure for many of these different things, of, okay, the Holy Spirit has led in a particular way. And so there's that we're doing it out of obedience, where we feel like this is something God is saying right now, hey, this is what I want you guys to do. 24/7 prayer is a good idea in general, but this kind of expression feels like it's right. We're right on time with the Lord's timetable.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was visiting the Global Family website before our call, and I saw that it mentioned the Moravians and their sort of slogan, "May the Lamb receive the reward of his suffering." And that, to me, is what drove them to host 24/7 prayer for 125 years, if you know the Moravian story, or over 125 years. I don't remember how long it was, but 24/7 prayer in Herrenhut, Germany for over 100 years, 125 years, something like that. And then to go sending missionaries out, going to the nations to share the gospel with people out of the place of 24/7 prayer. And their whole motivation was, may the Lamb receive the reward of his suffering. So that's a great reason. Jesus is worthy.
That's a great reason. And Jason Hubbard, who I mentioned earlier, the visionary and founder, when you hang out with Jason, that's his heart. He's he is like a Moravian to the core.
That's awesome.
And so that stuff is reflected on the website, and so I know that's animating for for all of us, and just for Jason in particular. It's like a unique revelation that he carries of that heart.
That's awesome. When I was writing my book on David's Tabernacle, I was researching the Moravians a little bit, and I came across a quote from basically a journal where they were talking about when they launched their 24/7 prayer watch. And I didn't realize that they actually said in there that you could sing. They specifically mentioned singing and worship. So it was actually 24/7 prayer and worship. A lot of times you hear people talk about the Moravians and it was just prayer. But it basically says when you run out of things to pray for, you can also just praise God. It's sort of like what it says, more or less. It's like if you run out of things to pray, just start worshiping, start singing, And so I didn't realize that Moravians were also a singing and praying people. But anyway, it's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So there's not that much singing on Zoom.
Yeah.
Which is
singing's hard. Music's hard on Zoom.
Music's hard on Zoom. But what I've found is we just lean into verbal praise.
Right.
Like we can just praise I love singing. I'm a musician as well, like you. And so, to me, that was part of the challenge of thinking about doing this on Zoom is we're going to miss what when we're in person, we literally just do it all the time. Even if we're praying, we'll have music in the background. And how is this going to work on Zoom? So there's different ways to do it, but mostly I've just seen people using like verbal praise, and worship, just exalting the Lord with their words, with their lips. Awesome. Or you can have one person sing at a time. It does work to have, this person's going to sing a song. But when you all try and sing together, it just sounds like total chaos.
Yeah, you've got latency. By the time the signal gets to somebody and gets back, you've got this weird delay, and it's fun. Awesome. So that's the why behind the global family. Jesus is worthy. The Lord's speaking, leading. Let's talk about how. How can people participate? How can people get involved with what's going on there?
Yeah. If you go to our website, it's globalfamily24-7prayer.org. There's instructions there on how to join. Basically, you just fill out a simple registration. You'll get an email back that'll have the link and password on how to join. And then you're able to join the prayer room pretty much any time that you would like to. You can just log in, be a part of an hour. If you're interested in prayer leading, we do have openings from time to time as people are coming in, coming out. Yeah. And so you can find instructions there on how to maybe be a part of that.
Yeah. So people can just jump in anytime, hop on Zoom and just join in any prayer meeting.
You can join into any prayer meeting. Yeah. And there's a schedule on the website. You can check out who's leading at what times. Oh, cool. Check out what language it's in. Yeah. I tend to pop in on, I don't know why I tend to pop in on the Korean hours for some reason, but nice. You just hear a group of people going for it from South Korea. Yeah. And
that's cool.
So yeah, you can join at any time. It is, I think one thing that is helpful, and I think just in general in prayer, it's good to make it a part of your regular schedule. So, right. It's fun to be able to join spontaneously. And I think that's a great resource. But it's great to make it a part of your schedule. Take a look on there, see, okay, which groups are maybe doing this regularly? Are there any people I know or am familiar with that I'd like to join? And I think of all the things that are great about Global Family, there's probably two features that I think are awesome. One is it's participatory. So there's tons of streaming prayer online. Yeah. But this is something that's both 24/7 and it's participatory. So you can come in and not just watch someone else pray, but you can be part of a prayer meeting. Yeah. And so I think that element is really powerful. That's cool. And then the other element is it's global. And so you can really come and pray with your brothers and sisters around the globe, which is just amazing. Awesome. To be able to, the time, effort, energy to get us all in the same space apart from this technology would be massive. But, using this technology, we can gather together from all over the world.
Yeah, that's incredible. We'll be sure to link to the website in the show notes in the description of this episode so people can click through and join in with the global family that's praying 24/7. That's amazing. Do you suspect that this is just going to continue on indefinitely?
So, yeah, we made a commitment for 2021.
Yeah.
My suspicion is that this is going to go on indefinitely. And even if this particular expression stops, I think we're going to see a lot more expressions like this. I'm already aware of several other groups that are in the process of launching their own online prayer room. And so I think this is something, just the technology's there. Yeah. I think, things are going to move forward on this. I'll just give a shout out to one of our partners, the Aqueduct Project. They actually host the Global Family 24/7 prayer room, and they've kind of been pioneering online prayer spaces. They have multiple rooms that have online prayer. And so if you go to aqueductproject.org, you can, or just Google search Aqueduct Project, you can see some of their other offerings that they have. We really love working with them, and we're trying to kind of cultivate multiple online prayer opportunities for people.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have this idea, I wouldn't call it a vision from the Lord or anything, but this idea of virtual reality prayer room. So I don't ever use VR anything. So I've never, it's totally outside of my lane, but I'd imagine that will be coming at some point where you put on virtual reality glasses and you feel like you're in the room and you see a band up front that's playing and people are praying, or you're with other people. So it's a little weird, but I would bet that's coming. Somebody's going to do that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Zoom is maybe the best video, or other similar, like this format that we're talking in now.
Yeah.
This is what we have now, but
Sure.
In 10 years maybe that'll be a reality, or 5 years. I mean, I think that would definitely be cool to be able to have a sense of space and your surroundings as you're worshiping and praying together.
Yeah, so. We'll see. So, all right. Well, man, this has been awesome. Hey, would love to share a little bit about what's happening with 10 days as well beyond the global family. Just let people know what's happening 2021 with you guys. I think you've got some stuff coming up around the time of Pentecost, right?
Right. Yeah. So 10 days 2021, we're looking forward to September 6th to 16th, which is the dates for this year. And our invitation is, to people, if you feel called to be just a leader, mobilizer, we call them a city coordinator.
Yeah.
We're looking for people to take initiative in gathering the body of Christ in their area for a time of concerted prayer, where people really stop normal life and enter into kind of an upper room type experience, where we get to see and experience the John 17 unity of the body of Christ in a given area, in a geography. So where Christians come together, primarily to seek God, but also to love each other. Can involve evangelism, any kind of good works during this time.
Yeah.
But a consecrated season, an upper room season. So our invitation is out there for that. We're excited to see what God does in the fall. But as kind of a way to get there, we are doing another 10 days Pentecost on Zoom. And it's going to be part of it. We're going to partner with the Global Family Prayer Room. So it'll be in that same prayer space.
Yeah.
It's going to be 24/7 worship and prayer. And then we're going to have 2 hours each day of teaching and preaching. So it'll be really an equipping time as well. We're going to kind of just use that to launch us into the summer and launch us into a season of mobilization as we look towards the fall.
Yeah.
And getting cities involved in 10 days.
Amazing. What are the dates of Pentecost this year, when the 10 days leading up to that?
Yeah, the dates are May 13th to the 23rd.
Okay.
I should mention, too, we're partnering with so many different groups. I can't even keep track, but
yeah.
On kind of a united effort called Hope for the Coming Harvest. It's folks in different missions and prayer organizations. IHOP KC, Go 2020 or 2021.
And these are
Global
all focused
Voice
on
of
the time
Prayer.
of Pentecost?
Yeah, all focused on the time around Pentecost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the season from Easter to Pentecost.
Right.
There's all these different groups that are partnering together.
Yeah.
And have been collaborating kind of, okay, what are you guys doing? How can we do this together?
Yeah.
So it's been really cool to be a part of that as well.
Yeah. Awesome. So 10 days is the 10 days between the in the fall feast, the day, help me with the two feasts that it's between.
Oh, yeah. It's the Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement.
Between trumpets and atonement, but it's also 10 days how long the disciples were up in the upper room leading up to Pentecost, the outpouring of the Holy Spirit.
That's right.
So that works
That's right.
well.
So it works well, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's funny that just that coincidence or that works that way.
Yeah.
But
great.
it's kind of been part of our DNA to always have a little spring, a little fall.
Yeah.
Really, the focus is more on the fall.
Right.
But the springtime we use almost as like an equipping time.
Yeah.
A point of engagement for people, and not necessarily saying, "Hey, stop your city." We're just saying, "Hey, let's pray a little more than usual.
Right. Let's
get
together.
to know each other."
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
So
Well, that's awesome. Well, we'll include the link to the 10 days website and everything in the description too, so people can connect with all of that. That's amazing. You got a lot going on, Jonathan. That's some exciting stuff. Anything else you'd want to share before we wrap up here?
Well, do you want to? Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to tell me about this emerging prayer leader network group that you're a part of?
I would love to. Sure. Well, I had a good friend of mine named Jonathan Friz who reached out to me a while back, and he was mentoring an emerging prayer leader of a house of prayer that we both actually knew. He had been mentoring him in some ways, and around the same time that you reached out to me, Jonathan, there was a number of things kind of happening where people who were, mostly young leaders who were launching prayer ministries or houses of prayer, or just, wanting to grow in their ministry, prayer ministry, started reaching out to me, and it was kind of interesting. So there was a Facebook group that started, and then there was a conversation with you, and it was just this sense that God was wanting to begin to have some leaders like you and I who have been leading these prayer ministries, been involved in the prayer movement now for 15 plus years, to begin to intentionally pour into the emerging generation of leaders, those that are up and coming, primarily those who are younger, but even those who are just kind of fresh in their ministry leadership as well, even if they're a bit older. And so, yeah, as we talked, it seemed like it was the Holy Spirit was stirring in us to begin to do this together. And so we both kind of put together a handful of leaders that we thought could want to engage and participate in a small group, basically on Zoom, that we could have some conversation and mentoring and mutual strengthening. And the response was pretty much, as we prayed and reached out to some of these leaders, the response was almost all of them, I believe, said, yes, we want this. We need this. We've been wanting this. We've been longing for this. So we've been doing that now for, a month or so. And it's been really, really amazing.
What are some of the greatest stated needs that you sense from some of these emerging leaders?
I like how this interview just swapped, and now you're asking me questions. This is awesome.
I just thought that would be fun. Sorry.
No, this is great. It's great. No, I mean, I think, one of the things we touched on most recently is longevity. I think that was something they expressed. They said, we want to be able to do this long term. How do we sustain what we're doing? How do we sustain our leadership and our life and our passion for the Lord? And, I would guess that, they've seen people who have quit, they've seen people who have given in to moral failure, leaders and pastors, and they want to know how to stay and not quit and to do it for decades. And so we've been having some amazing conversations around that. And I think we're going to continue to do that. Not that we've got all figured out, but we haven't quit yet, you and I. And so that's success.
We're still sticking around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got a ways to go though.
Yeah.
How
about you?
I've loved the times. Sometimes we wrap up and I'm like, I don't know what we just did, but I really liked it. Conversation is very lively.
Yeah.
There's a sense of God's presence. Just the joy of getting to know some of these guys. I think, as you mentioned, maybe on one of our first calls, is like, wow, it's just an honor to be in a room with people that are pursuing Jesus, just doing significant things in their areas. And just exciting to see the potential of what could come out of their lives, as they continue to follow Jesus. And so,
yeah, I mean, it gives you a lot of hope for the prayer movement, when you see emerging leaders that a lot of them, people don't know who they are, but they're pioneering, efforts to unite their city in prayer or to build a community, a worshiping, praying community. And they're really having a powerful impact, many of them, some of them in different levels, of impact than others or different stages of their ministry. But it gives me a lot of hope that they're doing it, that they're wanting to do it, that they're wanting to grow, that they're wanting to have longevity in it. I think that's one of the things we desperately need is we need to see what has been birthed over the last 20 years sustained from generation to generation, not just sustained, but multiplied, even more so. And I think, now what we're seeing is some of those who were profoundly impacted by what God's done the last 15 or 20 years in terms of calling people to day and night worship and prayer. God's now saying, hey, you've got to become fathers and mothers. Even if you feel young, it's time to turn around and think about the next generation that's emerging. How can you sow into them, or how can we see this thing multiplied? Jesus spent his, 3.5 years sowing into his 12. How do we follow the Jesus model to do that?
Yeah. I'll be honest. Of all the things I could do, and all the things I get to do in ministry, which it's all good, it's all meaningful, but things like that where we get to invest in people one-on-one or in a small group setting, like for me, it's like the most enjoyable part of ministry. And I can see why the Lord focused on that.
Yeah. Jesus was a smart guy.
He was onto something. Yeah. It's just, there's something so powerful about that life exchange that happens.
Yeah.
In that kind of an intimate context, and just the joy of seeing people, it's just like your own kids, like when you see them, take their first step or, hit that first hit in baseball or whatever, there's such a joy of, seeing that growth. So
for sure. Yeah. And I've just personally seen over the years, to me, what seems to be the most substantial long-term fruit of my ministry has been when it's been those people I've invested in more directly in that way, whether it's an individual or in a smaller group or a team that I've been able to invest into. That to me is the fruit that I see. Okay, years later, there's still stuff that's manifesting because of that time together. So valuable.
Totally.
Yeah. Awesome. Or any other questions for me, Jonathan?
I know. I was like, I kind of flipped things there, so now I don't know what to do. I've confused myself.
No, that's awesome.
No, man, this has been really great. I just
great.
want to say I've loved getting to partner with you more closely on that as well. That's been a huge thing too. And I think you and I and others kind of in our age and experience, it's almost like what you said, like there is this trajectory of the prayer movement. We've maybe been involved for 15 so years, whatever, and now it's almost like I feel like we're almost like an Isaac bridging generation,
right?
Between those who've come before and those who've come after, and it's just cool. What we were talking about earlier, like the same theme has been resonating for the Lord for me of connecting with the younger generation, discipling the next generation. I've spent so much of my ministry kind of like reaching out and connecting with the older generation. And like now, not that I haven't worked with younger people, whatever, but there's been like this real sense of like the need to honor, the need to preserve. And so it's almost like I feel like we're in this in-between place of preserving this generational connection and preserving what God has done, and then allowing that to even increase in these upcoming leaders. So
yeah.
Anyway,
that's amazing. So good. Well, awesome. That was a good little what would you call it? PS to the end of the episode there about the global family. That's great. Well, awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. It's been great having you on the podcast again.
Yeah, Matthew, thanks so much for having me. This is really fun. Enjoyed it.
All right, man.